Ambassador Helena Vasquez stood at the viewing window of the Galactic Council station and watched ships from 100 different worlds drift past. Some were elegant and curved like silver fish. Others were blocky and practical. A few looked like nothing she could describe with human words. After 15 years as Earth representative to the Council, she still found the view beautiful. Behind her, the council chamber was filling with delegates. She could hear the clicking of Torvashian legs on the metal floor. She could smell the faint sweetness that meant Kalori delegates were nearby. The low rumble of Velthari voices made her jaw tight, but she kept her face calm. She had learned a long time ago that showing emotion in this place was a mistake. 50 years. That was how long humanity had been part of the Galactic Council. 50 years since the first alien ship appeared above Earth and changed everything. Helena remembered watching the news as a child, seeing her parents cry with joy at the knowledge that humans were not alone in the universe. The joy had not lasted. The galaxy humanity discovered was not a friendly place. It was old and tired and ruled by species who had been traveling between stars when humans were still living in caves. These ancient civilizations had seen young species rise and fall countless times. They had long ago decided that newcomers were either useful or dangerous. If useful, they could be exploited. If dangerous, they needed to be controlled. Earth was classified as neither. The Council placed humanity in Tier 3, the lowest category for spacefaring species. Tier 3 meant minor significance. It meant Earth's votes in the Council carried almost no weight. It meant human ships were searched at every port. It meant trade agreements that favored everyone except humanity. Helena had spent 15 years smiling through insults. She had watched delegates laugh at human proposals. She had signed treaties that gave Earth nothing while demanding everything. And through it all, she had remained polite, professional, calm. Today would be different. She turned from the window and walked to her seat at the edge of the great circular chamber. The center of the room held the speaking platform, a raised disc of polished stone where delegates could address the full council. Around it, seats rose in tiers like an ancient amphitheater. Earth seats were at the very back, behind a pillar that blocked half the view. The session began with routine business. Trade disputes, border adjustments, a request from the Milani Collective for emergency food supplies after a crop failure. Helena voted yes on the food aid, knowing her vote meant nothing. The motion passed anyway, though several wealthy species voted no because they did not want to spend resources on what they called lesser civilizations. Then came the matter Helena had been waiting for. The High Arbiter, a tall Kalori with golden scales and ancient eyes, activated the main display. A star map appeared in the center of the chamber, showing a cluster of systems near the galactic rim. The Council will now hear the matter of the Karishi territories, the High Arbiter announced. His voice was soft but carried through the chamber. Ambassador Vasquez of Earth has requested time to speak. Helena stood and made her way down to the speaking platform. She felt eyes on her from every direction. Most of those eyes held contempt or boredom. A few held curiosity. None held respect. She reached the platform and activated her translation device. When she spoke, her words would be converted into every language in the chamber. "Thank you, High Arbiter," she said. "I come before the Council today to discuss a matter of great concern. The Karishi people are facing extinction." A murmur ran through the chamber. Not of concern, of annoyance. Helena continued. "As many of you know, the Karishi are a peaceful species. They are artists as musicians and poets. They have never developed weapons of war. They have never threatened anyone. For 3,000 years, they have lived quietly in their home systems, creating beauty and sharing it with the galaxy." She touched the control, and the star map zoomed in on a single system. A small blue world appeared, covered in clouds and oceans. This is Karishi Prime. Population 4 billion. 6 months ago, the Velthari Dominion demanded that the Karishi pay tribute. When the Karishi refused, the Dominion began a military blockade. No food or medicine has entered the system in 4 months. The Karishi are dying. She looked around the chamber. Earth has sent humanitarian aid ships. All have been turned away by Velthari warships. We have filed 17 formal protests with this council. All have been ignored. I am here today to ask why. The chamber was silent. Then, from the Velthari section, came a deep laugh. High Commander Torax of the Velthari Dominion rose from his seat. He was massive, nearly 3 meters tall, with dark red skin and forearms that ended in clawed hands. His people were warriors. They had conquered dozens of systems over the centuries. They sat on the council not because they were respected, but because they were feared. The human speaks of things she does not understand, Torax said. His voice was like rocks grinding together. The Karishi owe debts to the Dominion. Old debts. We are simply collecting what is owed. Helena kept her voice steady. The Karishi owe you nothing. The debts you speak of were manufactured. Your trade agreements were designed to trap them. Torax smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. And what will Earth do about it? Send more charity ships? Write more letters? He laughed again, and this time, other delegates joined him. Your species is soft, Ambassador. You are prey animals pretending to have a seat at the table. You have no military worth mentioning. You have no power. You have nothing but words, and words do not stop warships. Helena felt heat rise in her chest, but she kept her face blank. She had heard worse. She had been hearing worse for 15 years. We have always believed in giving others the chance to be better, she said quietly. We hoped that this council would uphold its own laws. We hoped that basic decency would prevail. She paused and met Torax's eyes directly. We hope you reconsider your position, High Commander. Torax snorted. Hope is for the weak. The vote was held. Earth's motion to intervene in the Karishi situation failed. Only 12 species voted in favor. Over 200 voted against or abstained. The Karishi would continue to starve. Helena returned to her seat and sat in silence as the session continued. Other matters were discussed. Other votes were taken. She participated mechanically, her mind elsewhere. When the session finally ended, she made her way to the transit hub where human vessels were docked. Her aide, a young man named David Chen, fell into step beside her. That could have gone better, he said quietly. It went exactly as expected, Helena replied. The Karishi ambassador was watching. She was crying. Helena nodded but said nothing. There was nothing to say. They reached the human section of the station. It was small and cramped compared to the areas used by major species. The walls were plain metal. The lighting was harsh. It felt like an afterthought, which was exactly what it was. Her personal ship was waiting in the dock. As she approached, her communications officer came running. Ambassador! Emergency transmission from Karishi Prime. Helena's stomach dropped. Show me. A holographic display flickered to life. It showed a Karishi female, her feathers matted and dirty, her eyes wide with terror. Behind her, Alana could see smoke and fire. The sound of explosions echoed through the recording. To any who can hear this, the Karishi said, her voice breaking, the Velthari are attacking. They said we had 1 day to pay. We could not pay. They are bombing our cities. They are killing everyone. Please, someone help us. Anyone, please. The transmission dissolved into static. Helena stood frozen. Beside her, David had gone pale. Get me ship movements, Helena said. Her voice was calm. Too calm. Now, the communications officer worked frantically. A moment later, data scrolled across the display. The Valkyrie had sent a full assault fleet to Koreshi Prime. Ground troops were landing. Cities were burning. And in the middle of it all, a small marker blinked. The Human Aid Station. 150 aid workers. Doctors and nurses and engineers who had stayed to help even when the blockade began. Casualties? Helena asked. The officer checked the data. His face crumbled. The aid station was hit in the first wave. Direct strike. No survivors. Helena closed her eyes. 150 people. People who had volunteered to help strangers. People who had believed that kindness could make a difference. Gone. She opened her eyes and looked at David. Get me a secure channel to Earth. Priority 1. Ambassador. Priority 1 is only for... I know what it's for. She walked to the communications booth and sealed the door behind her. The screen flickered, and then she was looking at the face of Secretary General Okonkwo. He was an old man with white hair and eyes that had seen too much. Helena, he said. I've seen the reports. 150 dead, she said. Plus, however many Koreshi. The council refused to act. They laughed at us. The Secretary General was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy. I'm calling an emergency session of the Security Council. We'll need your full report. Sir, Helena hesitated. I've been doing this for 15 years. I've smiled and nodded and taken their insults. I believed that patience would work, that eventually they would see us as equals. She paused. I was wrong. Okonkwo nodded slowly. I know. We all were. He looked at something off-screen, then bah. The city of Geneva had not changed much in 50 years. The old buildings still stood along the lake. The mountains still rose in the distance, their peaks white with snow. But if you looked closely, you could see things that had not been there before. The communications tower on Mont Salavi was not really a communications tower. The research facility beneath the Alps was not really a research facility. And the beautiful glass dome that covered the United Nations headquarters was not really glass. Admiral Chen Wei-lin stood at the window of the Emergency Command Center, located 300 meters below the streets of Geneva. She was 62 years old, with gray hair cut short and a face that rarely showed emotion. She had served in the Earth Defense Force for 40 years. She had trained for a war that she hoped would never come. Today, that hope had died. The command center was filled with activity. Officers moved between stations, their voices low and urgent. Holographic displays showed ship positions across known space. One display showed Koreshi Prime. The planet was marked with red zones where Valkyrie forces had landed. Another display showed Earth, surrounded by what appeared to be communication satellites and civilian stations. They were not communication satellites. They were not civilian stations. Secretary General Okonkwo entered the command center with Ambassador Vasquez at his side. They looked tired. Helena looked like she had not slept in days. Admiral Chun, Okonkwo said. Status report. Chun turned from the window. All assets are in position. The Council still believes our orbital infrastructure is commercial and scientific. They have no idea what we actually have up there. And if they did, Chun allowed herself a small smile. They would be very concerned. She walked to the central display and activated a detailed view of Earth's solar system. Points of light appeared throughout the system, far more than should exist for a Tier 3 civilization. 50 years ago, when we made first contact, our leaders made a decision, Chun said. They looked at the galaxy and saw what it really was. Not a community of peaceful species working together. A jungle, predators and prey. The strong taking from the weak. She highlighted several of the points of light. So we prepared. The display changed, showing the true nature of Earth's orbital infrastructure. What the galaxy thought were communication satellites were actually weapons platforms. What they thought were research stations were manufacturing facilities. What they thought were cargo ships were warships with their weapons hidden behind false hull plates. We have 342 capital ships, Chung continued. Over 2,000 support vessels. Our weapons technology is approximately 3 generations ahead of the current galactic standard. We develop fusion drives, then antimatter drives, then something we call quantum tunneling drives. We can cross the galaxy in days, not weeks. Helena stared at the display. I was ambassador for 15 years. I had no idea. You weren't supposed to, Okonkwo said gently. No one was. We needed the galaxy to believe we were weak. We needed time to build. Why? Helena asked. Why hide all this? We could have demanded respect. We could have protected the Karashi years ago. Chun's expression softened slightly. Because we hoped we wouldn't need it. Because we wanted to believe that the galaxy could be better than it was. We spent 50 years giving them every chance to treat us fairly. She paused. They failed. Okonkwo nodded. The Council had 50 years to show us that strength wasn't necessary for survival. Instead, they showed us exactly why we needed to be strong. An officer called out from across the room. Admiral! Valkyrie fleet movement detected. Chun walked to the tactical display. A cluster of red dots was moving through space, heading directly for Earth. The Valkyrie 3rd Fleet, the officer reported. 800 warships. They'll reach Earth orbit in 72 hours. Why? Helena asked. Why send a fleet here? Punishment, Chun said calmly. They killed our aid workers, and we protested. Now they want to teach us our place. She looked at Okonkwo. Orders, sir? The Secretary General was quiet for a long moment. He looked at the display showing Karashi Prime, still burning. He looked at the display showing the Valkyrie fleet racing toward Earth. He looked at the faces of his officers, waiting for his decision. Activate Protocol Prometheus, he said quietly. It's time. Chun nodded and turned to her communications officer. Send the signal. All ships. All stations. All personnel. We are now at full alert. Across the solar system, things began to change. On Mars, the great domes that everyone thought were farming colonies opened to reveal shipyards filled with vessels that had never been registered with the Council. On the asteroid belt, mining stations transformed into resupply depots. On the moons of Jupiter, power plants that were supposedly experimental research projects came fully online, feeding energy to weapon systems that could crack planets. And around Earth itself, the communication satellites and research stations shed their disguises. Hull plates retracted to reveal weapons arrays. Engines flared to life that the galaxy had never seen. Ships that had been pretending to be cargo haulers dropped their false cargo pods and activated their true systems. In the command center, Chun watched her forces come online. 342 capital ships. 2,000 support vessels, 10,000 orbital defense platforms. More firepower than the Valkyrie had used to conquer their entire empire. Sir, an officer called out. Secure channel from the Valkyrie fleet. They're demanding we surrender and prepare for occupation. Chun looked at Okonkwo. Response? The Secretary General thought for a moment. Helena, I believe this falls under your expertise. Helena stepped forward, her expression unreadable. Open a channel. The main display flickered, and High Commander Torax appeared. He was on the bridge of his flagship, surrounded by officers. His forearms were crossed, and he wore the expression of someone who expected to be obeyed. Humans, he said, you have 1 hour to surrender your planetary government to the Dominion. If you refuse, We will bombard your cities until you comply. You have no fleet. You have no weapons. You have no choice." Helena looked at him for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was different than it had been in the council chamber. Harder, colder. "I, Commander Torax, you attacked a peaceful world. You murdered 4 billion innocent people. You killed 150 of our citizens who were there only to help." She paused. "This was a mistake." Torax laughed. "What will you do? Write another letter?" "No." Helena's eyes were like ice. "We will give you one chance. One. Withdraw your fleet from Earth space. Withdraw your forces from Karishi Prime. Surrender yourself and your officers to stand trial for war crimes. You have 72 hours to comply." Torax's laughter died. He stared at her with something that might have been confusion. "You threaten me? You have nothing. You are nothing." 72 hours, Helena repeated. "If your fleet is still in our space after that time, we will remove it. If your forces are still on Karishi Prime, we will remove them. And if you personally are not in custody, we will find you. There is nowhere in this galaxy you can hide." Torax leaned forward, his face filling the screen. "You are insane. When my fleet arrives, I will personally oversee the destruction of your species." Helena smiled. It was not a warm expression. 72 hours, High Commander. The clock is running." She cut the channel. The command center was silent. Officers stared at their ambassador with something like awe. "That was satisfying," Helena said quietly. Chun nodded. "It was. But he won't withdraw. I know. He'll attack the moment he arrives. I know. 800 ships. They think we're defenseless." Helena turned to look at the display showing Earth's true fleet, now fully revealed and moving into position. "Then they'll learn," she said. "The hard way." Okonkwo stepped forward. "Admiral Chun, you have operational command. Ambassador Vasquez, prepare a message for the Galactic Council. Inform them that Earth is formally withdrawing from all existing treaties and trade agreements. Also inform them that any ship entering our space without permission will be considered hostile." "They'll think we've gone mad," Helena said. "Let them think what they want." Okonkwo looked out at the stars. Invisible beyond the underground walls, but present in his mind nonetheless. "For 50 years, we showed them who we wanted to be. Patient, peaceful, kind. They mistook that for weakness." His voice hardened. "Now we'll show them who we can be when patience runs out." In orbit around Earth, ships continued to emerge from hiding. They formed into squadrons, then fleets. Their weapons came online, filling space with enough firepower to end civilizations. 72 hours. The galaxy thought it knew humanity. They were about to discover they knew nothing at all. And on the bridge of his flagship, still racing toward Earth. High Commander Torax dismissed the human's threat as the desperate bluff of a doomed species. He would realize his mistake soon enough. 72 hours passed. High Commander Torax stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crimson Vengeance, and watched the stars blur as his fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Around him, his officers worked at their stations with practiced efficiency. 800 warships, the pride of the Veltari Third Fleet, emerged from the darkness of space and turned toward the small blue world ahead, Earth. Torax had studied the planet. He knew its population, its resources, its pathetic defense capabilities. The humans had perhaps 30 ships, most of them converted cargo vessels with barely functional weapons. They had a handful of orbital stations that might have defensive systems. They had nothing that could challenge even one of his cruisers, let alone 800. This would not be a battle. It would be an execution. "Signal all ships," Torax commanded. "Attack formation. We will begin bombardment of major population centers as soon as we enter range." Target their capitals first. Let them see their leaders burn. His communications officer hesitated. Hi, Commander. There's something strange. Our sensors are detecting additional contacts around Earth. Torax frowned. Additional contacts? How many? The officer's voice became uncertain. Approximately 340. Impossible. They don't have 300 ships. Sir, they're definitely there. And they're big. Bigger than anything we've seen from them before. Torax walked to the sensor station and looked at the display. His two hearts skipped a beat. The space around Earth was filled with ships. Not the small, clumsy vessels his intelligence reports described. These were massive warships, sleek and dangerous, arranged in perfect defensive formations. Their power signatures were enormous, far beyond anything the Valkyrie possessed. What is this? Torax whispered. Before anyone could answer, his communication system activated. A human face appeared on the main display. It was Admiral Chun, calm and composed, sitting in a command chair, surrounded by holographic tactical displays. Hi, Commander Torax, she said. Your 72 hours have expired. Your fleet is in Earth space without permission. You have 1 minute to surrender. Torax found his voice. Where did these ships come from? This is impossible. You're a Tier 3 civilization. We were never a Tier 3 civilization, Chun replied. We just let you believe we were. This is a trick. Projections. Holograms. 1 minute. Hi, Commander. I suggest you make your decision quickly. Torax looked at the sensor readings again. They were not projections. The ships were real, solid, and their weapon systems were powering up. All ships. He roared. Attack. Destroy them all. The Valkyrie fleet surged forward, 800 ships unleashing a storm of plasma fire and missiles. The attack would have devastated any normal defensive force. It should have torn through the human ships like fire through paper. It didn't. The human ships moved with impossible coordination, every vessel acting as part of a single mind. They flowed around the Valkyrie attacks like water around stones. Their defensive shields shrugged off, plasma bolts that should have pierced any known armor. Then they fired back. Torax watched in horror as human weapons tore through his ships. They weren't using plasma or missiles or any technology he recognized. Their weapons were beams of pure white light that cut through Valkyrie shields like they weren't there. Ships that took days to build were destroyed in seconds. How? He gasped. How is this possible? The battle, if it could be called that, lasted 11 minutes. When it was over, the Valkyrie Third Fleet had ceased to exist as a fighting force. 300 ships were destroyed outright. 400 were disabled, drifting in space with their systems dead. The remaining 100 had surrendered. Not a single human ship was lost. On the Crimson Vengeance, Torax sat in his command chair and stared at nothing. His flagship was surrounded by human vessels. His weapons were gone. His engines were gone. His fleet was gone. Hi, Commander Torax. It was Chun's voice again. You are now a prisoner of the Earth Defense Force. You will be transported to a holding facility where you will await trial for war crimes. Resist, and your ship will be destroyed with all hands. Torax didn't resist. He couldn't. He was still trying to understand what had happened. Across the galaxy, the same scene played out on millions of screens. The Galactic Council had access to sensor networks that covered most of known space. They had watched the battle in real time. They had seen the Valkyrie, one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy, crushed in minutes by a species they had dismissed as insignificant in the council chamber. Delegates sat in stunned silence. The High Arbiter was the first to speak. This is unprecedented. The Kilori ambassador, an ancient being with scales that had faded to silver with age, leaned forward. They hid this from us. For 50 years, they hid their true capabilities. But why? Someone asked. If they had this power, why did they let us treat them as lesser? Why did they accept our insults? Before anyone could answer, the main display activated. Ambassador Helena Vasquez appeared, broadcasting from Earth. "Members of the Galactic Council," she said. "I imagine you have questions." No one laughed at her this time. 50 years ago, humanity made first contact with the galaxy. We discovered a civilization far older than our own, with technology far beyond anything we had achieved. We also discovered that this civilization was built on exploitation and fear. The strong took from the weak. The ancient dominated the young. Power was the only thing that mattered. Helena paused, her eyes moving across the camera as if she could see each delegate individually. We could have revealed our true capabilities immediately. We had weapons and ships that would have made us one of the most powerful species in the galaxy from day one. But we didn't want that. We wanted to believe that the galaxy could be different. That cooperation could work. That kindness would be rewarded. She took a breath. So we hid. We developed our technology in secret. We built our fleet behind false walls. We accepted your insults and your unfair treaties and your contempt, all while hoping that someday you would prove us wrong. That someday you would show us that power wasn't necessary for survival. Her voice hardened. You proved us right. Instead, the council chamber was utterly silent. The Valtteri murdered 4 billion Karishi. They killed our citizens who were there only to help. And your council did nothing. When we begged you to intervene, you laughed at us. You called us prey animals. You told us that hope was for the weak. Helena leaned forward. So now you know the truth. We are not weak. We have never been weak. We simply chose not to use our strength because we hoped we wouldn't have to. She straightened. The time for hoping is over. Earth is withdrawing from the Galactic Council. We will no longer accept treaties that favor other species. We will no longer tolerate insults or threats. And we will no longer stand by while innocent species are slaughtered for the crime of being peaceful. She looked directly into the camera. The Karishi are now under Earth's protection. Any species that threatens them will face us. And as the Valtteri have learned, facing us is not something you want to do. The transmission ended. In the council chamber, chaos erupted. Delegates shouted at each other. Some demanded immediate action against Earth. Others called for peace negotiations. A few quietly began calculating how far they could run before human ships caught them. Only the oldest delegates, those who had lived for thousands of years and seen empires rise and fall, understood what had really happened. The galaxy had changed. For millions of years, the rules had been simple. The strong dominated. The weak served. Species rose to power through conquest and fell through defeat. It was an endless cycle that no one questioned because no one could imagine an alternative. Now, there was an alternative. A species that was strong enough to dominate but chose not to. A species that had hidden its power rather than use it to control others. A species that valued kindness over conquest, cooperation over competition, hope over fear. And that species was now the most powerful force in known space. The old rules were about to change, whether the galaxy liked it or not. The Valtteri Dominion had ruled through fear for 3,000 years. They had conquered 47 worlds. They had enslaved dozens of species. Their military was considered invincible, their empire uncheckable. Now their third fleet was gone, destroyed in 11 minutes by a species they had. Considered beneath notice. Supreme Autar Calvos the Eternal sat on his throne in the heart of the Dominion's capital world and tried to understand what had happened. Around him, his advisors argued and shouted, each one blaming someone else for the disaster. Intelligence failures. Tactical mistakes. Bad luck. Calvos knew it was none of these things. The truth was simpler and more terrifying. They had been fooled. For 50 years, the humans had pretended to be weak. They had accepted insults and unfair treatment. They had smiled and nodded while the galaxy laughed at them. And all the while, they had been building an army that could crush any force in known space. It was brilliant. It was terrifying. And it filled Calvos with a rage that burned hotter than any star. "Mobilize everything," he commanded. "Every ship, every soldier, every weapon. We will not be humiliated by these creatures." His senior general, a scarred veteran named Kravik, stepped forward carefully. "Supreme Autarch, perhaps we should consider negotiation. The humans have proven themselves more capable than we believed. A war could cost us everything." Calvos looked at him with cold eyes. "Do you think they will stop with the Third Fleet? Do you think they will be satisfied with protecting the Koreshi? They have shown the galaxy that we can be beaten. If we do not respond with overwhelming force, others will see us as vulnerable. Our subjects will rebel. Our enemies will attack. The Dominion itself will fall." He rose from his throne, his massive form casting a shadow across the room. "We have 2,000 ships. We have armies numbering in the hundreds of billions. We will throw everything we have at them. Even if their technology is superior, they cannot have enough ships to fight on all fronts. We will drown them in numbers. We will burn their worlds. We will make them regret ever revealing themselves." The war began 3 days later. The Velthari attacked on 6 fronts simultaneously. They struck at human outposts along the frontier. They sent raiders to disrupt human supply lines. They launched their main fleet directly at Earth, hoping to end the war with a single massive blow. They failed on every front. The human military fought unlike anything the Fostadi Velthari had ever encountered. Their ships appeared from nowhere, struck with devastating precision, and vanished before counterattacks could be organized. Their soldiers wore powered armor that made them equal to 10 Velthari warriors. Their drones filled the sky in such numbers that they blocked out the stars. But what truly shocked the Velthari was not how the humans fought. It was how they didn't single quotes to dot in war after war. Throughout galactic history, victory meant destruction. Conquered worlds were stripped of resources. Captured soldiers were enslaved or executed. Defeated species were broken, humiliated, ground into dust. The humans did none of these things. When they captured Velthari ships, they took the crews prisoner and treated them with dignity. When they seized Velthari worlds, they removed the military forces but left the civilians untouched. When Velthari soldiers surrendered, the humans gave them food and medical care and held them in facilities that were cleaner than many Velthari homes. Commander Syrinx had served the Dominion for 60 years. He had fought in a dozen wars. He had seen atrocities committed by his own people and accepted them as the price of victory. Now he sat in a human holding facility on a captured Velthari colony, and he could not understand what was happening. A human officer entered his cell. She was small by Velthari standards, barely reaching his chest, but she moved with a confidence that had nothing to do with size. "Commander Syrinx," she said. "I'm Captain Santos. I've been assigned to answer any questions you might have." Syrinx stared at her. "Why? Why what? Why haven't you killed me? Why haven't you tortured me for information? Why is this cell heated and comfortable when you could leave me to freeze?" Captain Santos looked at him for a long moment. "Because that's not who we are. Everyone does these things. It is war. It doesn't have to be." Syrinx shook his head. "I don't understand you. You have power. You have won. Why do you not use your power as everyone else does?" Captain Santos pulled up a chair and sat across from him. "Let me tell you something about humanity. We come from a planet where we spent most of our history fighting each other. We've seen what happens when the strong abuse the weak. We've experienced it. We've suffered from it." She paused, and we decided we didn't want to become that. Even when we had the power to do anything we wanted, we chose not to. That is weakness. No. Her voice was firm. That is strength. Anyone can kill. Anyone can destroy. It takes real strength to build, to protect, to choose mercy when you could choose cruelty. Syrinx had no response to this. Across the war zone, similar scenes played out thousands of times. Velthari soldiers who expected torture received medical care. Velthari civilians who expected oppression found human aid workers helping to repair the damage of battle. Velthari commanders who expected execution found themselves in comfortable cells with access to food, exercise, and even entertainment. The Velthari propaganda machines tried to spin this as weakness. But the soldiers who experienced it knew better. They began to talk. They began to question. They began to wonder why they were fighting a species that treated prisoners better than the Dominion treated its own citizens. On the front lines, the war continued to go badly for the Dominion. Human ships seemed to know where Velthari forces would be before they arrived. Human troops anticipated every tactic, countered every strategy. It was as if the humans could see the future dawn. In truth, it was simpler than that. Human artificial intelligence, developed in secret over 50 years, processed tactical data faster than any organic mind. Human sensors detected Velthari ships before they even launched. Human strategic planning ran billions of simulations for every possible scenario. The Dominion was fighting blind against an enemy that saw everything. After 6 weeks of war, the Velthari had lost 400 ships. The humans had lost none. Velthari territory had shrunk by 30%. UN territory remained completely intact. Supreme Autarch Calvos watched the reports in his throne room and felt something he had never felt before in his long life: despair. "They're not even trying to destroy us," he said quietly. "They disable our ships instead of destroying them. They occupy our worlds instead of burning them. They take our soldiers alive instead of killing them." General Kravik stood beside him. "Our people are beginning to question the war, Supreme Autarch. There are protests on Velthari Prime. Some of our subject species are refusing to send troops. They think we're going to lose." Yes, Calvos was silent for a long time. Then he made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. Prepared the Genesis Protocol. Kravik went pale. "Supreme Autarch, that weapon has never been tested. We don't know if it will even work. It will work. It was designed to destroy stars. Surely it can destroy one human world. But if we use it, if we destroy Earth, then the humans will have nothing to fight for. Their fleet will scatter. Their morale will collapse. We will win. Or they will respond in kind. They clearly have technology we've never seen. What if they have similar weapons?" Calvo smiled grimly. "Then we will see if their precious morality survives the loss of their homeworld. Prepare the weapon. Target Earth." The order went out. Deep in a hidden facility on the edge of Velthari space, engineers began the activation sequence for a device that had taken a century to build. A device designed to destroy stars. They did not know that human intelligence had been watching the facility for years. They did not know that every communication, every energy signature, every personnel movement had been tracked and analyzed. They did not know that even as they prepared their ultimate weapon, human ships were already moving to stop them. The Velthari thought they could win by destroying Earth. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. The Genesis device was enormous. It sat in the heart of a heavily fortified station on the edge of Velthari space, surrounded by a fleet of 300 warships. It had taken 100 years to build and could, in theory, cause a star to go supernova. Point it at a solar system, fire once, and everything within 10 light years would be destroyed. Supreme Autarch Calvos had ordered it aimed at Earth. Admiral Chun watched the weapon's location on her tactical display, 700 light years away. Her expression was calm, but her mind was racing through possibilities. The station's defenses are formidable, her tactical officer reported. 300 ships plus orbital platforms. If we attack directly, we'll take significant casualties. How long until the weapon is ready to fire? 6 hours. Chun nodded slowly. 6 hours. Time enough for a direct assault if she threw everything she had at it. But that would mean thousands of deaths, human and Velthari alike. There had to be a better way. Open a channel to the station, she said. The main display flickered. A Velthari face appeared, an officer with the rank markings of a station commander. Admiral Chun, he said stiffly. I assume you've come to surrender. Station commander, I know what you're building in there. I know it's aimed at Earth. I'm giving you one opportunity to stand down. The commander laughed, but there was no humor in it. You're outnumbered and outgunned. Your ships are impressive, but you can't break through 300 vessels. By the time you reach this station, Earth will be a memory. I wasn't planning to break through your fleet. Chun leaned forward. I was planning to bypass it entirely. The commander frowned. What? Behind a Velthari defensive fleet, space rippled. A single human ship emerged from what appeared to be nowhere, a small, sleek vessel that had not been there a moment before. It was directly above the weapons station. Quantum tunneling drives, Chun said quietly. We don't need to fly through your fleet. We can simply go around it. Around anything, really. Your station's defenses are designed to stop ships approaching from normal space. They're useless against something that simply appears inside them. The commander's face went pale as alarms began blaring on his station, on the small human ship. Captain James Rodriguez checked his targeting systems one final time. His vessel was a specialized strike craft, designed for exactly this kind of mission. One ship, one pilot, one chance. Admiral, I have a clean shot at the Genesis device's power core, he reported. Ready on your command. Chun's voice came through clearly. Captain, you understand the risks. You're inside their defensive perimeter. If anything goes wrong, I know, Admiral. But if that thing fires, 8 billion people die. My life against 8 billion? That's not even a question. Chun was silent for a moment. Make it count, Captain. Rodriguez smiled. Always do. He fired. The strike was surgical, precise. A single beam of concentrated energy lanced through the station's hull and struck the Genesis device's power core. The resulting explosion was contained, directed, exactly as planned. The weapon itself was destroyed, but the station remained intact. 600 Velthari personnel survived. The device that would have destroyed Earth was gone. Rodriguez's ship vanished back into quantum space before the enemy fleet could react. He emerged safely behind human lines 30 seconds later. In his throne room, Supreme Autarch Calvos watched the report in silence. His ultimate weapon destroyed. His fleet still intact but powerless to prevent it. His empire crumbling around him. General Kravik stood beside him. Supreme Autarch, we should negotiate. The humans have demonstrated that they can reach anywhere. They could destroy this palace as easily as they destroyed the Genesis device. We cannot win this war. Calvos wanted to argue. He wanted to rage and order another attack and fight until the last Velthari ship was destroyed. But he was old enough to recognize when a war was truly lost. Contact the humans, he said quietly. Tell them I am prepared to discuss terms. The negotiations took 3 weeks. The humans did not demand the destruction of the Dominion. They did not insist on occupation or reparations or the enslavement of the Velthari people. Instead, they demanded something far more revolutionary. Justice. KOVOS and his senior commanders would stand trial for war crimes, specifically for the genocide of the Qurayshi. The Velthari military would be reduced to defensive forces only. All conquered species would be given the choice of independence or continued association with a reformed dominion. And most importantly, the Dominion would adopt a new constitution guaranteeing basic rights for all citizens. It was the end of the Velthari Empire, as it had existed for 3,000 years. It was also a beginning. 1 year later, Ambassador Helena Vasquez stood in the rebuilt Galactic Council chamber. The room was different now. The old seating arrangement, which had placed powerful species at the center and weaker ones at the edges, had been eliminated. Now all delegates sat in a single circle, each voice equal to every other. Earth had not demanded this change. The council had made it themselves. Inspired by humanity's example, Helena looked around the circle at faces that had once laughed at her. Kalori, Torvashan, Milani, dozens of species she had dealt with for 15 years. They were not laughing now. The High Arbiter called the session to order. The council recognizes Ambassador Vasquez of Earth. Helena rose and walked to the speaking platform. The same platform where she had begged for help and been ignored. Where Torox had called her species prey animals. Where she had announced Earth's withdrawal from a system that valued only power. 1 year ago, she began, I stood in this chamber and asked you to help a peaceful species that was being destroyed. You refused. You told me that strength was all that mattered. That hope was for the weak. That kindness was foolishness. She paused, letting the words settle. You were wrong. She touched a control, and a holographic display appeared above the platform. It showed Karishi Prime, no longer burning. It showed cities being rebuilt. It showed children playing in parks that had once been rubble. The Qurayshi are recovering. With Earth's help, they are rebuilding their civilization. They will never be the same as they were before. But they will survive. They will grow. And they will remember who saved them and who stood by and did nothing. The display changed, showing the former Velthari Dominion. Ships moved peacefully between worlds that had once been occupied by force. Freed species celebrated their independence. The Velthari themselves, no longer masters but equals, were learning to participate in a galaxy where strength alone did not determine worth. The Velthari are changing. Not because we conquered them, but because we showed them a different way. Their people saw how we treated prisoners. Their soldiers experienced mercy from an enemy. Their civilians received help instead of oppression. Helena's voice grew stronger. We could have destroyed them. We chose not to, and in choosing mercy, we accomplished what no conquest ever could. We changed their hearts. The display faded. Helena looked around the circle. 50 years ago, humanity entered a galaxy ruled by fear. We saw ancient civilizations that had spent millions of years competing, conquering, exploiting each other. We could have joined that system. We were strong enough to dominate anyone we chose. But we decided that if we ever gained power, we would use it differently. She straightened her shoulders. We played nice because we wanted to be nice. We accepted your insults and your unfair treaties because we hoped you would eventually see us as partners rather than prey. We hid our true strength because we believed, despite all evidence, that the galaxy could be better. Our eyes moved from face to face. Now you know who we really are. Now you know what we can do. And now you have a choice. You can fear us. You can try to destroy us before we grow even stronger. You can continue the old ways, the endless cycle of conquest and exploitation that has defined this galaxy for millions of years. She paused. Or you can join us. You can help build something new. A galaxy where strength protects instead of oppresses. Where different species work together instead of against each other. Where hope is not weakness, but the foundation of everything we do. Helena smiled. And for the first time in her diplomatic career, it was a genuine smile. We've shown you what humanity can do when we stop playing nice. Now let us show you what we can do when we truly start working together. The council chamber erupted in applause. Not from everyone. Some delegates still looked skeptical, fearful, resentful. Change would not come easily or quickly, but it would come after the session. Helena returned to the human section of the station. It was no longer small and cramped. Earth now had quarters befitting a major power. But she didn't go to the official chambers. Instead, she went to a small observation deck where she could watch the stars. David Chun found her there an hour later. "Quite a speech," he said. Joining her at the window, "I meant every word." "I know." He was quiet for a moment. "Do you think it will work? Changing the galaxy?" Helena considered the question. Outside the window, ships from 100 worlds passed by. Some were former enemies. Some were old friends. Some were new allies just beginning to understand what Earth offered. Thank you for watching.